to the Planning, Transport, Regeneration Overview and Scrutiny Committee on Wednesday the 21st of February. I'm Councillor Spillman, Chair of this committee. I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded for publication on the Council's website. So we'll go to agenda item 1. Have we got any apologies for absence?
No apologies for absence from members, Chair.
Thank you very much. Have we got any apologies from officers?
Apologies from Matt Keeley, Chair.
Thank you very much. Item 2 on the agenda, the minutes. Has anyone got any comments on the minutes at all? Are we all good for the meeting that never happened? I don't think we have any meeting minutes for that meeting, do we? Because proper minutes, is that the one where the camera didn't work?
Yeah, we have minutes.
We've still got minutes?
Yeah, they're in the agenda.
Oh, they were written as well, good stuff. So, are there any comments on the minutes? Are all good? No? Good. We'll approve them. Good stuff. Item 3 on the agenda, items of urgent business. I've got one item of urgent business that I brought here, and kindly Mark is going to present a brief statement that you can ask questions on, but there are limits to the in-depth detail, but it's regarding the results so far of the consultation, rather the level of engagement. So if you want to go ahead, Mark, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, members will be aware that the consultation on the initial options proposals as part of our local plan consultation closed on Monday evening, and the Chair has asked me to let you have some numbers on what responses we got through various channels. I would stress that as the consultation ended on Monday evening, many of the officers involved were involved in a number of weekend, evening and other meetings, and have been working very hard on the project over the last few weeks, not just during the consultation but in the run up to it. So a number of them are taking a few days off, and therefore we haven't got any analysis on the figures at this stage. It's too early, but I did promise the Chair that I would share some basic numbers as to how the responses were, and we can come back to a future meeting, either of this committee or its reincarnation as place, if that is what happens, and talk about more in that analysis. But as at the close of the consultation, we'd had 12,200 views of the bespoke pages on the website. So that's unique views, rather than somebody's watched 3 or 4 pages and counted them twice. But we have analysed what we've called active engagements. So some people just go in and look. Other people look at several things, download documents, watch videos, because some of the virtual sessions were recorded. And we have counted 4,300 what we call active engagements. So people who have gone beyond simply looking at the consultation, they've actively downloaded documents and viewed them. 540 people actually submitted their responses on the website. We have had some emails in separately, but we have yet to analyse those. Many of them talk about the local plan, but actually are about other issues. So we're analysing those that are actually responses, and we'll bring that back. And the number of attendees at face-to-face engagement events, we've counted at 684, albeit that at one meeting we think there may have been more that didn't sign in. Corringham had a particularly good number of attendees, not all of whom signed in. So in summary, 12,200 views of the local plan page on the website, 4,300 people who we think have gone beyond that and engaged more, 570 submitted their response via the website, and 684 attended the face-to-face engagement events. As I say, we've not done any analysis of that, so as the Chair has said, there will be limits to what else I can say at this stage, but we will be looking at that and reporting back in due course. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So anyone can ask any questions, but I think Mark's explained that the analysis is limited at the moment, but I think there is enough there's enough points that come out of the raw numbers. Now, I know that one of my constituents has put in a number of detailed questions, and I thank you for answering them in quite a lot of depth, Miss Jones. One of the points that Miss Jones makes is, and for me, the only number, I mean, the other numbers are great, but in terms of usefulness, the number that really matters is the amount of people that have actually filled in the consultation. So 570 is the number that really matters, because that is the data we're going to use on which to build our local plan, and we're going to use that data to judge what our residents actually want. So for me, that is the key figure there. The other numbers are great, but it's that number which you have to concentrate on. So, I mean, she asks, in terms of consultation responses, what do you think the threshold should be? I mean, you must have a rough idea for that consultation to be deemed of significant value and enough value for us to say that the consultation's been a success.
I'd firstly respond by saying that the website responses are not the only responses to the consultation. Many of those who attended the face-to-face events will have left comments at the event. Some of them will have relayed comments to staff that will have been noted. Those have yet to be analysed. I mentioned that we've had a lot of emails as well. So to simply focus on 570 is too early, and it's too early to establish whether there is a meaningful response. Every response is meaningful, but it's too early to say whether we feel that that consultation has produced enough for us to move forwards. So I until we've done the analysis, I can't say any more.
So if you were to reach the conclusion that the consultation hasn't produced enough responses, or has, when do you think that decision is likely to be made? And if it comes to a conclusion that you haven't got enough responses for the consultation to be adequate, whatever criteria you're using to judge that, will the consultation be reopened?
It's too early to analyse the data, so I'm not able to answer that question.
I presume if it was considered a low amount, too low, that there must be some line somewhere. I presume that if the figure is considered too low, that there is will to reopen the consultation before we go forward.
It's too early to discuss the analysis. We haven't done it, and if such a decision is required, that wouldn't be by me.
One of the things that I was concerned about, and this is another response that you gave, and this I was concerned about. There was no leafleting campaign to advertise this consultation, and so without a leafleting campaign, what efforts did the council make to reach hard-to-reach groups?
Excuse me. You refer to a response that I've made.
No, there's a response in this email earlier. I just want to know that it was confirmed there was no leafleting campaign. So what efforts were made during the consultation to reach hard-to-reach groups? I'm
not able to answer that today. I was not involved in the communication or the decisions, and I don't recall emailing you with that information anyway.
But can you provide the entire committee with details of what efforts were made to reach hard-to-reach groups? That can be provided, can it?
As part of our analysis and our response when we bring this back for scrutiny, yes.
So this is what really got me going. So again, this is a members' inquiry, but also an inquiry from a member of the public. I was also copied into it, and it said, "Why did the question from my resident was, why did the local council abandon their leafleting campaign that was planned?" And the response that's given, and it comes through members, and I'm assuming it came from your department, was the view was taken that sending out paper leaflets would violate our climate emergency pledge. Our climate emergency pledge. Now, I'm pretty staggered by that. I mean, the fact that that response would come out on a consultation as big as this, but not only that, on a consultation that involves building tens of thousands of homes, miles and miles of road within Thurrock, to come out of a response that says that sending out paper leaflets would violate our climate emergency pledge. Not only to, I mean, I would hope that that wasn't the decision that was made and you're not aware of this, but to put that in writing, even if it was your decision, seems an extra level of I can't use the word in this committee. So, is it your view that a decision was made by this council not to advertise and not to leaflet this borough about the local plan because leafleting would violate our climate emergency pledge?
You're asking me about an MEQ that I haven't seen, a response I haven't seen, and discussions that I wasn't involved in. So I'm not able to answer that question at this stage.
Again, can we have? I will. Sorry, I'll go to the committee after that. So I would hope that you could. I mean, I'll show you. I'll send the email to. I mean, I assume when I get an email from members' inquiries and my my constituent gets an email from members' inquiries that this has gone through a question like this. That this has gone through the team, gone through you, been signed off by whoever signs off press release, members' inquiries, and then gone to members and then gone out. So I appreciate it if you haven't seen it because you're probably as shocked by that response as I am right now. So I'm going to empathise with your situation, and you probably find it as laughable. And I appreciate your poker face having heard that. But if you could come and get us a reply on that, and I will send you that today. And if you could get members a reply on that, because if that is the case that decision has been made on that basis, then I have considerable concerns. And I apologise because I thought you would have known about this. I do apologise for ambushing you like this because it's quite apparent that you're unaware of this information that I'm giving you, which is irregular. So yeah, if you could do that, that would be very helpful, Mark.
In response, firstly, I was clear at the outset and at the last meeting that there would not be sufficient information about the local plan consultation to be scrutinised tonight, but that I would put forward some numbers as requested. Directors do not see the response to every MEQ. That is not the council's process. And equally, you have implied words in my mouth in your response, and my view, I have not expressed a view, and therefore I would appreciate that you don't express a view on my behalf.
I appreciate that, Mark. I'm just empathising rather than putting words in your mouth. So I accept that. But no, if you could get us a view on that. But I mean, I appreciate you can imagine that as a member reading that. I think all members here will be pretty shocked by that. Did someone else want to make a comment? I think it was Alex first.
Thank you, Chair. I indicated to speak after your second question. My question was going to be, why did we stop a leafleting campaign, which you then went on to talk about. So I don't have a question. Thank you for raising that, though, Chair, because I mean, whoever's given that response, and it clearly wasn't Mark, is an absolute clown. I mean, that's a joke, that is. So thank you for raising that. And when Mark does go and investigate, I'd appreciate it if perhaps the whole committee can be emailed a response.
So I will happily look at that. All I would say is that I've worked at numerous local authorities recently, and I'm not aware of any that I've worked with who habitually use leafleting campaigns anymore as a way of getting information out. But as I say, I will look into the circumstances as to what decisions were made and when about the comms on this particular issue, and ensure you get a response.
I think I saw Councillor Watson wanted to make a comment here.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Mark. Can I just Sorry, can I just, I know you can't give us an actual response on the numbers at the moment, I really do get that. But the response that you've sort of like gave just off the website is like less than 1% of our of Thurrock itself, which is a little bit of like for me is a bit of a not happy with really. I think we need a little bit more. So I want to just park the climate pledge stuff because we have got one, but that's irrelevant for me right now. But is there a way then? Is when is the next milestone? And have we got an opportunity window where we can get a leaflet out per ward to that ward to have that say on it? Have we got that sort of timeline in order to do that? And it's like we've already got the information, so it's a quick and dirty like leaflet. We've already got it all, so it should be able to turn around pretty quickly.
Chair. Firstly, in response, I would say that my understanding is that engagement with local plans is nationally very, very low. And therefore this should be seen in that context. The fact that over 12,000 people actually engaged in some way and chose not to make a comment doesn't, it's too early to analyse what the implications of that are, but I'd say I would focus as much on 12,200 people engaging with the process on our website as I would on the numbers that followed that up. But clearly, as we've discussed before, this is part of the local plan process. It's an initial options approach, and there will be further consultation later in the year on what comes out of this consultation, how that changes any proposals. So there will be a further opportunity, and at that stage, if members feel that the routes to consultation were not comprehensive enough this time, then we can consider that. But I would remind everybody that when this went to council, there was a specific paper on the consultation approach, and it was unanimously supported by members. So the consultation approach has been before members, was presented to council. If, having analysed the response to the consultation, we feel we could do more next time, then obviously we can look at that. But as I say, the fact that it's too early to suggest that what appears in percentage terms to be a low figure in terms of responses is a particular cause for concern. And as I say, the fact that a reasonably high percentage of the population did take the trouble to look at the pages on our website, I would see as a positive. But as I say, it's too early to do any analysis. As part of an analysis, we can do some comparison with what similar local authorities have got and bring a paper back. But beyond that, I don't think there's much more I can offer today. But I will feed that back to the team. As most of you are aware, I'm stepping down as Director of Place next week, but I will make sure it's fed through for the team who are picking it up, and that they come back to you with a comprehensive analysis of the consultation, what lessons or other issues we can learn from it, and how it will influence both the plan documents that follow and how we consult on those at the next stage.
So, thanks, Mark. I really appreciate the fact that we all agreed the comms, that's absolutely fine. But I think going forward on the next consultation then, even if we just do something in those wards that are going to be the most effective by their landscape-wise, for instance, my ward is not going to be affected as much as if you go into Ockenden or Bellas, and just like target the wards with the main amount of like infrastructure that is due to go into there on the different options as the next stage of the consultation could be one thing to consider.
I'm happy we consider all suggestions. As a final point, I would make the point that we did organise extra events in some areas where people felt that they couldn't attend earlier events. And also some of the virtual events we arranged in the last week or so have been videoed. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I gather that it's into the hundreds who've viewed those as well. So, we can always learn lessons, and it's important we do, but until we've analysed it, we don't know what those lessons are in detail, and we can't make recommendations back to you as to what we do next time.
Yeah, thanks. That it is. I'm glad you brought it here. It is really important. I mean, I'll be candid. Given the numbers we've got here, I don't think that we've got, unless there's like a deluge of hundreds and thousands and thousands of emails that comes out. As it stands, I don't think we've got an adequate consultation response to not reopen. So it's my view that I'll be writing to the department and requesting that the consultation is extended. And because I have grave concerns anecdotally, but also in terms of the raw numbers. But that is not a criticism of the consultation. It's just a observation of the results of the consultation, which are two entirely different matters. But that's just my view that 1%. I mean, I'm looking at a maximum 1% response. Realistically, is not an adequate consultation on a scheme as important as this for Thurrock, and that's just a personal view. But I really do appreciate you bringing this, and I apologise for assuming that you had knowledge of that, and I just assumed that you would. So I apologise for that. That's right. So if we go on to the next item on the agenda, which is actually declarations of interest. Has anyone got any interest to declare on any of these agenda items? No. If we go on to item 5. Item 5 was scheduled to be the portfolio holder annual report. I'm very disappointed to say that that's not occurring. It's not occurring. There's no fault of anyone. It's just that, as members are aware, there's an emergency cabinet meeting tonight regarding the budget, which was scheduled to make sure that scrutiny on the budget in the ONS could go forward. So unfortunately, the portfolio holder can't attend tonight, which is a great shame, because the portfolio holder reports being at committee is one of the really good improvements in our scrutiny process. I've enjoyed delivering them myself. Well, I've enjoyed parts of delivering them myself. It depends who's asking the questions, but I'm sure Councillor Maney would have enjoyed it as well. So let's move on to agenda item 6, which is the ITB Capital Programme 2024-2025. Now, this was obviously going to be delivered by Matt, but Matt can't be here for reasons of ill health of a family member, so we wish him well. And who will be delivering this report instead? Peter, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So, so apologies for Matt, unfortunately can't be here. I've got Steve, who works in Matt's team, with us, who can go into detail should you have any queries on the actual ITB programme element of it. So, if you can be gentle with him when questions come up, please. So the report sets out basically the approach to the ITB programme, capital programme, and highways maintenance block allocation programme for 2024-25, next financial year. We annually get a allocation from DFT for these two mainstream works that we deliver. The recommendations in the report ask that the committee provide comment on the ITB programme and the prioritisation of schemes centred around road safety, safer routes, area intervention, the EEV programme, and also note and comment on the highways maintenance block allocation and the pothole fund element. Finally, the last recommendation is that note and comment that delegated authority be given to the Interim Director of Transformation Public Realm in conjunction with the Cabinet Member for regeneration highways should there be a need to make minor changes to any of the programmes as the year plays out. So the DFT grant annual settlements for ITB, next financial year the ITB allocation is 979,000. This is allocated to provide physical works on the ground, staff time and design time to implement and deliver the programme. The ITB programme delivers an extensive range of transport improvements and reflects on the visions and aims set out within the Council's long-term transport strategy and vision. It ensures that we focus on the statutory authority or statutory requirement to reduce accidents, tackle congestion, deliver improved accessibility and improving air quality through transportation measures. It's important the ITB programme aligns with the emerging local plan and also the transport vision for Thurrock and the transport strategy which is currently being developed, and its effective use in funding to deliver the improvements needed to the transport network. The ITB programme is split out into 5 main focus areas: road safety engineering, safer routes, area intervention programme, electric charging and parking requests. With respects to the maintenance box allocation and the pothole fund, the funding is basically ring-fenced to highways maintenance, but it can cover all the assets, particularly on the maintenance block allocation. So it covers everything from bridges, cycleways, lighting columns, with the pothole fund then also targeting and ring-fenced targeting carriageways to ensure the best treatment measures. It's prioritised based on a risk-based approach and the whole life cycle planning, which aligns with the Council's highways maintenance strategy. And this ties into best practice nationally with regards to how we should be targeting our maintenance block allocation. The funding split on the ITB programme is set out in section 3 under 3.2. And it gives the splits in there. I can read them quickly now if you so wish, which is road safety engineering 300k, safer routes to school 115, area intervention 194, EV charging 115, parking 115, emergency minor works is 68k, and passenger transport 30k, and then 42k on public rights of way. The programme is set out in Appendix A, which lists out all the schemes and how it's proposed that these are tackled. As well as delivering these schemes, the Transportation Services also are looking at other funding or delivering other funding streams at the moment, such as the A126 Safety Improvements Programme and the A1013 Treetops Capital Bid Scheme. And there's also some funding from EV charging as well to complement the funding we have. With respects to the maintenance block allocation and the pothole funds, there's a total of 2.8 million, and within Appendix B it sets out what the programme is and how that's split out across the assets there. With regards to the consultation on the ITB programme, input's been received from interest groups, stakeholders, community forums, bus operators. There's a cycle forum that the council runs or the group runs that feeds into that as well. Your voice and the local plan road shows as well as a key element in feeding into that. The maintenance block allocation is tied into the asset management strategy with regards to how we target life cycle planning, and it prioritises the works around HGV routes, schools, key infrastructure routes and so forth. And again, as I say, that's covered in Appendix B of the report. That concludes the report really, so I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. I will be kind to Peter because Peter always gives me particularly detailed and to the point responses to my members' inquiries, of which there are many. So I thank you very much for him. He doesn't always tell me what I want to hear, but he always does it in a lovely way, so we're always good. But I mean, the main thing, I suppose, I mean, I would let other members speak because I think I've said enough so far this meeting. I mean, the main thing is that most members get all the time, and you're perfectly in the right place to answer, is the state of the roads and potholes. I mean, that is meat and drink for most councillors. Personally, I think it's fair to say that our roads are not as bad as neighbouring boroughs. I think that's fair. But what, in terms of your allocation that you're going to put forward for this budget in terms of 24-25, how far short of what you would ideally want are you?
That's hard to quantify, and we've not really quantified that as such, because obviously the challenges facing the council at the moment. We have been fortunate this year with the redistribution of the HS2 funding that we got given back in December, very late December, January. We got given an additional 314k. So we've been out, I don't know if you noticed around the borough at the moment, we've got a patching gangs out non-stop right through to the end of the financial year, trying to target these roads, Aristell Avenue being one. They were in, I think, last week, doing down there. So we're working around the borough trying to target these areas. How far short do we fall on the funding? Quite considerably, but that's the same for all local authorities. You know, when you look nationally, and you know, I go to forums and attend webinars, and it's a national problem. You've got the AA annual consultation and review that they do, there's CQC and various other ones, and it's a national problem, potholes. So it's not a quantified figure, but what we try and do is with funding we've got, with how we align our programmes, we try to squeeze out as much as we can to get as much done on the ground through the life cycle planning approach. So I like to think we do okay, and I'm thank you for the feedback regards how Thurrock's doing in comparison to other areas. But it's a challenge. But we've got an in-house team in the depot that go around non-stop doing potholes. I think last month they've done 800 pothole repairs in the depot, which is the highest we've had in about 12 months. I think since March 23. Sorry. So yeah, it's we just try and tackle it as best we can.
Brilliant. I think it was Alex next.
Up to you.
Councillor Maney.
Thanks for that, Peter. You say 800. How many of them are repeat potholes? And the reason I ask that is because I don't know what we're filling them with. But whatever's going in is quickly coming out. And I'm getting a lot of reports, as I'm sure my colleagues are, of filling the holes, and I'm getting a week coming back, the holes out again. Example, Sir Henry's in Averley. That's a giant pothole, and one which I've hit as well and done damage to my wheel. Now it was filled, 3 days later it's out again. And I have a feeling that the one in Ship Lane will go the same way. That's a really large pothole. So, yes, 800 is a lot to fill, but if you're going around filling them 3 times over, you're only really filling 300 potholes because you're doing them all 3 times. Why are they coming out? Well, years ago, you filled a pothole, it stayed there. One blast of rain and people are the tarmac's on their shoes. I'm not getting this.
No, it's fair question. So there's several reasons. So sometimes when we do a pothole repair, it's within an area of a carriageway that's crazed and cracked already. So we see it on a lot of roads where we do a patch repair, that patch repair holds, but next to it, because it's already crazed and cracked, and the water gets in that with the mechanical action, with the weather that we're getting, it's either freezing and the water's popping it, or with the rain that we seem to be getting more and more of now, that's leading to premature failures of the patches sometimes adjacent to where we've done. So that's sometimes some of the issue, and it's sometimes viewed that the patch repairs what's failed, it's just that the surrounding area around it's a bit worn and crazed and causing an issue. When we go and do that patch repair, unfortunately with the depot, we have to focus on that initial defect, that initial pothole. We haven't got the ability to do a much bigger patch, because then that leads into more resource, more time, or even a machine servicing scheme, which then has to be picked up by a capital programme. So that sometimes can be the reason for what's perceived to be a failure of the same pothole. Sometimes some of the potholes are in locations where it's hard to get onto. For the safety of the operatives doing the repairs, you might need to do a longer term closure, which will cause a bigger disruption, temporary lights. So sometimes we go out and we literally plug a hole using like a tub type approach. We try not to do that too often, But sometimes for the safety of the operatives and for the ease just to get in and out because of the location, sometimes that they are plugged. But then the view is that, you know, in an ideal world, we'd then try and go back as part of the patching program we're doing at the moment. We'd try and jump back on that and do that repair then. The simple fact of the matter is that, you know, our carriageways are in a condition that with the weather that we're getting, with the rain and the stuff where it's getting into the cracks and it's popping it all the time, that it is a challenge for the teams. So you said Chip Lane. Where was the first road? Because I will take them away. Henry's, did you say? So Henry's. Because I will take them away and have a look at them and ask the team to have a look. So because on certain roads we shouldn't be, you know, I wouldn't expect us to be plugging it. It should be a proper patch repair. So I'll take them away and have a look. So yeah, okay. Yeah, all right, I'll have a look.
Councillor Hartstein.
Thank you. So on page 14, please, 2.5. Just looking at the safest routes to schools, just the last sentence, these criteria is to be discussed and adopted by the emerging member officer task and finish group. I'm being cynical, but emerging sounds like it hasn't started yet. Where are we with that? Because then I have a follow-up from that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This would be one for me to answer. Steve Lyons, I'm the principal for the Transport Development team. This was something that was raised by Councillor Redsell at committee last year, and it's taken some time to get it together. Our first inaugural meeting, as you're right, it hasn't started yet, is on the 28th, which I think is next week sometime. And from there, we're going to have together, in the meantime, we've got together a list of where we think issues are around schools so that we can have these discussions and actually have some evidence base to discuss it through and looking at what other boroughs are doing in various areas to try and bring that forward. So, no, you're exactly right. We haven't started yet. It's taken some time to get together, but things have been happening behind the scenes before we meet. I think this, I'm not sure, but I think this initial meeting might be officers only, and then I think it'll involve, as far as I'm aware, I think it'll involve the councillors to bring their thoughts to see where they think that the issues actually are, and then we can discuss it and perhaps have a look at it on a request-driven as well as just evidence-based.
Thank you. Can I just follow up, please?
Cool,
Just looking then on Appendix A, because obviously it's there on Appendix A, how confident are you that that's not going... There's paper everywhere. That's not going to creep in terms of, because obviously there's nothing in there in terms of the project description because you haven't decided it yet. Are you confident that that's going to be able to be sort of realised next year?
That really depends on what comes forward. There are some things that we will be able to deliver on, but it really depends on what comes out of it as to whether we're going to be able to deliver, because we'll probably need to take forward some surveys and things first. I think we'll probably be in a position to actually have some idea of what we're doing. As I say, it is a piece of string stuff. It depends what comes forward. But a lot of it I'm expecting just to be signs and double yellow lines and enforcement issues, really, because that seems to be the main, that and speeding. Other than that, if it's something more deep than that, then we may have to... But I think once we get the head teachers involved as well, I think that will be good.
Thank you. I can't remember what I was going to ask. I've completely got it out of my head. It's okay, thank you. It's completely gone.
Councillor Watson.
Hi, thank you. So just following up on that part of the, I'm assuming the membership the members will get together the new municipal year if you're only going to meet next week or the week after, and then we're going to Purda in a couple of weeks' time. I don't really want all of that money being taken up on feasibility studies, and we just actually need to deliver things. And I think there's some of the stuff that needs to be delivered is a little bit more than just like enforcement. Enforcement is a big thing, but there is other options out there that we just need to consider around the more congested parts of the schools. And I'm just a bit surprised it's taken so long to sort of get to a place. 115,000 is a bit like random figure, Pete. So how did that come about? Because it's just very random that you've just chose 115, not 100,000 or 200,000, but 115. So was that just a residue that was left over after Pete done his programme?
Thank you. No, that's our programme. Pete's in a different kind of team. That was myself and Matt Kiley put the programme together. And yes, it was kind of just balancing up on various bits and pieces. But I don't know, I'm not quite sure. I haven't seen the appendix. But I've done a programme with carryovers, etc. And we've already got quite a bit of money for a specific Safe Routes to School project, which is the Harris Academy down Mayflower. That is a big one that does need a lot of work. And as for spending money on feasibility, we undertake the feasibility studies ourselves. We don't put it out to an external body, or at least up to date we haven't. Whether that will change going forward with the processes and everything and loss of staff, etc., that I can't comment on. But it is the intention that we will take these forward ourselves. The team will do the feasibility study. The expenses would go on traffic surveys and bits like that, but they're not a great deal in the main going scheme of things. Are you going to be on the task and finish group? Because if you've got some real comments and places to identify, then that would be great. I mean,
personally, maybe not, but I don't need a task and finish group to say what I want to do and say. So, but we've all got the similar issues going anyway. So that's a discussion at various groups who will be on the task and finish group when it comes to it. So the other thing as well is the EV charging facilities. It says minimum 20 for 150. Are we just doing the minimum?
I'm not directly involved in that, but I don't believe so, no. I think there's a programme going forward where we're going to try and implement as many as we can in the next financial year. It's down to the funding and working with our contractor, they're our partner, if you like. And it also comes down to getting road space, etc., to be able to put these things in.
Can the Scrutiny actually see that programme of work, so where those EVs are going to be, in what ward and in the borough? That would be good. And Pete, can I just ask you a quick question? Sorry, Chair. I'm assuming the highways maintenance capital programme is 24-25, because you've got 23-24 across the top here. Is that just a typo?
Yes, it is, yeah. Yeah, sorry, apologies for that.
All right, no, that's fine. Where does the bridge money come in? Because I know is that a different pot of money completely? Because then, does that also have to take into consideration the work that you do to the bridges? Also needs to have the roads going over the top, has to be input into this budget?
Normally, we would, so the DFT maintenance block allocation has to cover all assets. Right. So normally there would be an allocation for bridges within the DFT maintenance block allocation. But the challenge we have with our bridge stock is that they're big ticket items. So if we were to tackle some of the challenges we have on our structures assets out of the DFT maintenance block allocation, then you're really going to be impacting your carriageways and your footways, so forth. So we've submitted some internal capital bids because we've got some real challenges at the moment on some of our structures. I think early indications are that we've been successful in the bids for next financial year, but that's still got to, I assume, is being discussed potentially in the next room now. But potentially, if we succeed in them bids, then it enables us to safeguard the DFT maintenance block allocation and tackle some of them structural issues that we have. For instance, you've got the 3 mile dyke structures, you've got Stoneness Bridge, the key infrastructure assets. So we've got some schemes in there to try and tackle some of them. So,
very last question, Chair. What's a jointing programme?
So the jointing, it's basically when we manage the network. So it goes back to we've got a suite of tools. Do we try to go out and hold the network together? Jet patcher, patching, resurfacing. Jointing's where you've got sort of linear cracks in the carriageway. So, and we're going to go out and we're going to do like a linear treatment, like a screed over it. Because if I can seal up them cracks, it then reduces, the deterioration of the carriageway further. So roads like Stamford Road and so forth and so on, there's linear cracks on them. It'd be good to go in and joint them before them cracks open up and make bigger, more challenging repairs to be done. So. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you for your report, Peter. One of the things I've thought for quite a while, and I think perhaps mentioned at a previous committee, is that the area intervention programme isn't as reactive as I think it could or should be. It's always seemed really rigid to me. So it was positive when I read at the top of page 15. It says additional criteria focusing on requests from members, residents, Essex Police, etc., will be considered to provide a more reactive approach. It seems we've sort of recognised perhaps the AIP could be a bit more reactive. We've identified that issue, and when we've said there we're going to consider requests from those groups. How is that going to work in practice? So I like the sentence, it sounds good, but how is this going to work in practice?
Yeah, it's the area intervention programme has been a little controversial over the last couple of years. It started off as a really good idea to try and get the areas that had the most accidents so that we could try and get down the accidents, and we actually had an actual evidence base to try and work with. But it's become clear, and I know Councillor Maney's stated this over the last year or so, well, previous year, they wanted us to be more reactive because some areas were being told we can't do anything at the moment because it doesn't fall into that IIP. I think it may well be after this year, this may well get looked at again in a different format. So we look at things on a more reactive basis than the accident basis. We'll look at the questions first. And oh, excuse me. And I think that's where this is. Well, this is where this is intended to go. We'll look at what the requests are first and where they're coming from, give them a weighting, and then we'll look at where the accidents are, and then we'll look at what we can do around that to see if something can actually be done. So that's how we're going to try and do it. It's we already get requests from various places across the borough which we draw in, but to be fair, they're mostly fairly spread out unless we get a cluster of requests, which, to be fair, already get looked at. But hopefully going forwards, that is the idea, that we will look at more request-led than accident-led, because the accident-led doesn't seem to resolve in the problem, because the more we've looked at the accidents in those areas, they've been random accidents in any case. So I don't really feel that it was working from an accident-saving point of view, and it needed reviewing in any case. And this has given us the opportunity to look at that. It was a 5-year programme initially, the AIP, and we were 3 years into it. This would have been year 4, so we're starting to make a change in the way we're looking at it, because we took on board the comments that it wasn't working from that point of view.
Thank you very much for that. That's good to hear. Second question I have is obviously one of the recommendations asks us to comment on the prioritisation in the ITB. Who has the authority to decide, you know, X amount is going to EV charging facilities, X amount is going to safer routes to school? Is that a decision officers make, or the portfolio holder, or are there parameters by what, you know, we have to spend a certain amount on each? Because certainly from my point of view, spending the same amount on EV charging and safer routes to school, I think isn't the right prioritisation. I've mentioned quite a few times at this committee, I might be in a minority of one, I'm not a big fan of EVs. So you know, 115,000, not massively impressed with that. And as I say, you've got the AIP there as well, which isn't a huge amount more, 194,000. That does to me seem like dodgy prioritisation. So who allocates the funding?
It's initially drawn up by myself and Matt Kiley. We don't make a decision. That is then passed up and it's scrutinised by the Assistant Director, Julie Neldra in this case, and the final decision is made by the portfolio holder. But we put forward different suggestions, and the numbers aren't just based on what you see on that chart, the numbers are based on carryovers from the year before, because some projects have got more money carried over from the year before, so they don't need so much input. The electric vehicles has to be match funded with the monies that's coming in from central government, so we're required to put a certain amount towards that if we're going to deliver it. The AIP, we've been given over the last few years £200,000 to each one each year, to the ones that were going forward. So that was I just continued with that particular basis. What was the other thing? Oh, Safe Routes to School. Councillor Maney didn't really want us to progress with that at the time. It was a suggestion that be incorporated into the AIP areas when we look at them. And as we now know, having discussed it with, I think with Councillor Maney's discussed it with Julie Nelder, and between ourselves, we were realising that wasn't really working, hence the change. But that was why there hasn't been a lot put into Safe Routes to School over the last couple of years. There is already quite a significant chunk, as I say, for one particular scheme. The £100,000 was put in because we didn't have any particular scheme in mind, and we've put some money towards it for this task and finish group, so that we've got some money to actually spend should something significant come up. I know you're addressing, but can you send me any details of ones that you'd like included following your comment? If just Matt's not with us anymore. Matt Ford isn't with us anymore. He's not part of us anymore. Yes, sorry, just to diverge. So have I answered?
Just to clarify, he is alive and he still works at the council, but he works in the planning team now.
Oh, sorry. Matt Ford isn't with Transport Development anymore, so he can't pass anything on to us directly. Okay. Sorry, Councillor Anderson, did I finish your?
Yeah, I mean, I'm never going to like the prioritisation there, but you've answered my question as to who has the authority in the process by which allocations are made.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Luke. So, very quickly on parking, you've got the review to assist the waste management team. I think we all have areas in our wards where we get the call or the email that bins haven't been collected because some roads are very narrow and tight. Obviously, we spent around we're planning on spending £20,000 on that. So, could you just give us a rough idea on what we're expecting, to achieve with that money and how that's improve things, and then also just a quick example of the PPA expansion and PRS expansions and what they can do. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Firstly, we have meetings with the waste management team once a month, members of our team. We've got a TRO officer in place now, and he tends to have the meetings, although others do attend, myself included sometimes. And they sit down and tell us where they've had significant problems, where they've received complaints, and then we look to see if we can implement weight restrictions to try and prevent cars parking in such a way to block their access. Biggest part of the problem was in the last little while they've increased the size of their trucks, so they can no longer get down some of the roads they could before. They've got a lot more swing rounds, so cars are parking not realising the issues they've caused. Some of the ones we're looking at doing now are 1 morning a week restriction, just to help, because otherwise we'll be sterilising the parking 24/7 for people, for a truck to come once or maybe twice a week if they have refuse as well. That's basically what we're doing with regards to the waste and recycling, if that answers the question.
Yeah, so has that been implemented anywhere in particular? So, to be honest, it does sound relatively okay, but you then have to, so you do 1 day a week and it's the specific collection day?
That's what we're starting, yeah. I think we put one in a little while ago as an experiment in Stanford-le-Hope. Can't remember the name of the road, but just west of the station, one of the back turnings. They couldn't get round one of the side roads. So we put just a 1 morning a week restriction in there. But that's what we're going forward with now in just off Devonshire Road, Satchfield. I think we're looking to put something around there. And going forward, after discussions, that's what we thought would probably be the way forward, because we want to allow access for the dust carts, but we don't want to destroy things for residents. Okay. As for the PPA, we've had lots of requests over the time for permit parking area extensions. 2 areas in particular. One is we did try it before. It was area K, area J, I think it was. It's Kent Road and Salisbury Road, that kind of area in Grays. We tried to bring that in at the same time as we did area H, which was the area below, which is Arthur Street and that kind of area. But it was rejected at that time. But ever since it's been rejected, we've had ongoing requests for more and more ongoing requests for us to include that area into a permit parking zone. Now, there'd been no funds set aside for us to do that, so now we're going to go out to consultation. Firstly, we'll do, and the other area we're looking at in a similar kind of way is South Ockenden, because it hadn't been large enough across the Orchards Estate, is it? Flowers Estate, sorry, I always get those, the other one's Orchards, yeah. The Flowers Estate, and it needs to go down to be expanded further there. We've had lots of Lime Close is one we're always getting requests for, but it also needs to extend further. We're even getting commuters park just over into Brandon Groves now. So that will be another one that we'll be consulting on. And what we'll do, we'll go out to all the residents in those areas, and it's all the residents and the businesses in those areas, and say, how would you be willing to support this if we brought this in? And if a majority of people from that area respond, if the majority of responses, I think is the way we're likely to go, the majority of responses indicate that they are interested in supporting it, then we'll actually draft something up, and then we'll go out to proper traffic regulation order statutory consultation, where we advertise it in the press, advertise it in notices, and but if they're permit parking areas, they will just be as the existing ones, which are just signage as you go in and double yellows where we don't want people to park. Other than that, permit holders will be free to park wherever they wish in the area.
And then just to follow up on that, so, and in the PRS, Appendix A, you've got ad hoc parking requests. PRS, yeah, under parking.
175,000.
17, I think.
Oh?
17.
Oh, 17.5 grand is that? I'm used to that.
They would just be ad hoc parking requests, say an individual or a councillor or a forum said, can we have some weight restrictions around this junction because it's difficult to pull out of here? There's something we do ongoing all the time, ad hoc parking requests. The same as, similar with minor works, if we get somebody saying, can we have some bollards, etc.
Okay, thank you. And then, Luke, just one other one very briefly. So when you look at the paragraph on page 15, it says, obviously, parking requests, and this will also enable the delivery of verge parking improvements to prevent parking in undesirable locations. So that, to me, suggests you sort of, you edit the road to allow more parking. Is that correct? On page 15. Parking requests at the top there.
Okay. Well, if we was doing actual alterations to the verge, that would fall under the Curbit scheme. So I think this seems a bit misleading, to be honest. I think what this is actually saying is we'll put yellow lines in to stop people parking on grass verges where they're not very welcome to park close to junctions, and where they're particularly turning it to mud, where there's other places available. I think that's what that's referring to, because to do anything else would need to go under the Curbit scheme, or, which we have done as part of the AIP schemes, we've looked at verge parking there and hardened the verge. And if
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, because we've had that in my area. I was very lucky to have a lot of funding for Lenmore Avenue. I know there's been some other areas in the borough, and it does work fantastic. And actually, that will go some way to helping us out, because we've all got issues in our own wards where parking's getting out of hand. And actually, that paragraph there is fantastic, because the Curbit scheme's fantastic. But yeah, you are correct, it's misleading, because we're actually spending it on management and not so much to curb it. But okay, no, that clears it up. Thank you. Cheers.
Anyone else? Brilliant. I mean, one of the things that I've had quite a lot of, and I'm glad that, not long ago, the reply was always there's no money in the budget for it, is some of these parking requests where, you've got verges getting torn to pieces. They look like an absolute eyesore. And you just, as a councillor, because you just think, a lot of the time you're thinking micro, and you're not you haven't got this whole macro view that officers have to have, and especially when you're a resident and you just think, look, it just needs a mesh, just needs the council to come in and put a mesh on that, and that's resolved. I mean, perhaps we want to look at, in some areas, like working with communities to see if communities can make contributions towards mesh as well, and match fund some of these little projects. I'm sure some communities would even consider that because they're fed up with living, you know, with an eyesore right outside their house. So I'm pleased that there is more budget in that scheme. My ward's benefited from one that was particularly bad. I got a very positive reply about something called Araglen. That was awful, and I'd asked a couple of times and there wasn't budget, and then asked the third time and I was lucky that there was budget at that moment. So I mean, that's a really good one because it was just, it made the whole place just look terrible, and I'm really pleased that we've got some funding available again.
Glenn was done under the AIP for that, or is going to be done under the AIP. I actually did the sketch for that the other night, and that went to the contractors today. Yeah.
The relief, because I mean, one of the main concerns, I mean, in terms of, I mean, aesthetics, although they're not essential from a operational point of view, from a community point of view, I'm sure you agree with me that they are actually very important.
It's very understood that it boosts people's well-being about their, and how they feel about their local area. Yeah. That one, surprisingly, we didn't get, when we did the consultation through the area, we didn't get anybody in that area ask for that, and I was really surprised. It's a terrible, messy, muddy road. The request, finally, confirmation of the request, came through from housing in the end. So, but yeah. Please, we can help.
Good. Thanks for that. We've got no other questions. Does anyone, what officers want to sum up, or are we okay to proceed? Brilliant. So we've got the recommendations, 1.1 that the committee provide comments. We've done that. 1.2 that we note and comment. 1.3 that we note and comment on, that delegated authority will be given to the Director of Transformation. Are we all in agreement with the three recommendations? Agreed. Let's move on to item 7. I'm sure there's going to be no controversy here at all. The Tilbury and Grays Towns Fund update. Who's got the pleasure of presenting that?
Apologies, I will introduce it, Chair, and while I'm doing so, I will also introduce George McCullough to you, because many of you won't have met George. George has joined us relatively recently as interim head of Regeneration. You'll all be aware that Kevin Munnelly, who previously presented on these projects, who was the assistant director for Regeneration, has left us. Regeneration will sit within place going forwards under the new post that was created at, or agreed to be created at General Services Committee last week as Chief Officer Housing, Regeneration and Economic Development, and we'll take those forward. We last brought you an update on the Towns Fund projects in November. We last brought you an update on the Towns Fund projects in November and agreed that we'd bring them back roughly quarterly in line with the committee's meeting dates to continue to update you. When we last reported, the Tilbury projects generally were progressing in the right direction, and the report today confirms that they continue to do so. I don't propose to go into detail in the introduction about those, but George is here to answer any questions that you have on those. In terms of Grays Town Centre, we reported last time that a number of the projects really needed a review to understand whether they were viable going forwards. The capital expenditure on the projects is one thing, but making sure that there is a viable management approach that addresses any future revenue concerns. We've been working closely with the board that met in November, December, and is due to meet again on the 8th of March. There's been communication with the board in the interim, and we've been working closely with the design team. And we now believe that we have a viable proposal for works to the Lighthouse Cafe, a viable proposal for an activity centre based around the Sea Cadets, but with the opportunity for other community groups to utilise that. And those proposals will be going with updated costs to the Towns Fund Board on the 8th of March. We're hoping to circulate them to board members in advance of that meeting. The Riverfront and Beach project is progressing through design. I've noted that the way the report is worded might have caused some consternation around the impact of potential upgrades to the flood barrier. I think the wording probably emphasises that concern or adds to that concern, because it is correct that if we are to future-proof those works, they will almost certainly affect the cost of the project, but that is probably slightly different from viability. And it's really important that we make sure that if we are spending money now, we're doing it on things that don't have to be changed in the foreseeable future, or at least we've designed it with the ability for those changes to be made without undermining the integrity of the project, because some of those changes will be down to landowners to fund, but some of them will be down to the Environment Agency. And whilst we don't want to spend money that would be paid for by somebody else, we do need to make sure that what we are spending is correct. Equally, if we are building a facility that has a first floor room, the attractions of which are that it has a view of the river, we do need to understand at this stage that it will be tall enough to look over a wall if the wall is increased. So I just wanted to clarify that we believe those projects will still be deliverable within the budgets and within the timescales, but there will be an impact which we will assess and are continuing to assess with the Environment Agency, of making sure that we don't build a white elephant. If you're building a room that is for hire, and one of the marketing features of that room is that you get a panoramic view of the Thames, and in 5 years' time you get a panoramic view of a wall, then we will have failed. And I think that's, if I may be so bold, that's old Thurrock regeneration thinking, and we're ahead of it here, having been alerted to this and engaged with the Environment Agency. So, as I say, I would hope that once the board has seen and agreed those projects, we'll be able to get them to a future meeting so that you're aware of them. But in summary, the proposals for the Lighthouse Cafe are based around a significant refurbishment of the existing building with an extension that includes lifts and access to an upper deck that will connect with the walkway and enable an outdoor seating area with views of the river, rather than the previous proposal, which was to completely demolish the whole of the Lighthouse Cafe and replace it with a two-storey restaurant without any clarity as to how that would be financially viable. And similarly, the activity centre is not trying to cover every possible use that you might imagine might ever happen there, without any real clarity about who's actually going to be able to run that building. So it's been based primarily around the needs of the Sea Cadets, but with the ability for it to be very easily offered out to other groups to hire. And we'll be working on a business plan for that. So those are going forward. And the final point is that we've met with the Yacht Club. The proposal now doesn't involve moving the yacht club's boatyard. It does involve some potential improvements to that, improvements to the public realm around it, but it is now a deliverable proposition within the timescale, which it wasn't before. But as I say, George can go into more detail and support me in responding to your questions, but we've moved Grays on significantly with the board, and I hope that will be evidenced by a positive outcome of the board meeting in a couple of weeks' time. And as I say, we'll report that back to you following that.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the clarity 3.8, because that I read that and I just thought the entire thing was toast, I'll be honest. It read as if that was a precursor to an announcement that the whole beachfront was toast and there was nothing going to go forward. So, and that was concerns that I shared with the leader and portfolio holder and like other members of the group that had come up, and I was deeply concerned about it. So to get that reassurance definitely changes how this discussion goes forward considerably, because I was deeply concerned by it was as you say yourself, like reading between the lines there, it only ends in one way, doesn't it? So yeah, I'm really pleased by that reassurance. I'm pleased by the reassurance that the Sea Cadets are still going to be central to the Riverfront Activity Centre. I'm still got concerns about relations with the board. That there are still concerns from board members to me that at times council's tried to put its views about what this project should be above their views, and that's not how this Towns Fund was supposed to have worked. The council was supposed to facilitate the plans of the board, and not the other way around. So I would hope that, you've seen, and we've got a new fresh face as well, that probably helps. Not that I'm saying that it was the fault of the previous incumbent, but it definitely brings a new fresh face and a new fresh approach. So I hope that's positive. But I just think when you have that meeting, when you haven't met with the board for a long time, when was the last time you had a meeting with the board? Okay, so I would hope...
Just late December.
I would hope that there would be it doesn't need to be clear, but there needs to be an acceptance that this hasn't gone. They're looking over at Tilbury and seeing how Tilbury's going, and they're looking at what they've had so far, and they're wondering why the big difference between the two projects. So I would hope that you accept that there's a little bit of tension there, and everyone deals with that in a very mature way, and we get a fresh start, and we crack on with these projects, because I'm still very excited about these projects. I'm still very excited about what's going on in Tilbury, and I see the potential for this Grays project, but we do need to crack on. My deepest concern is at what point are we in danger of losing that money for Grays? And that's the question I would ask you. What are these sort of timescales? How long can we, continue to flail about before we risk having to give that money back?
Very valid points, thank you, Chair. I would say that actually at the November and December meeting, there was a lot of air clearing and agreement that we need to work with the board, not present to the board. It's one of the reasons why I've suggested to George today that we don't do what we've done in the past with the Grays board, which is turn up and present to them. We are sharing information with them ahead of the board, so that they come prepared to challenge it rather than being railroaded. I have to say also that we've had conversations with the design team, who do come along and present in a way that is, well, we know best, so please listen to us rather than listen. And I'll probably get told off by the design team for saying that, but I've said it to their face, that they need to recognise that there is a client here who wants to be actively involved, rather than a client that wants to be told what the solution is. So I think we've done some of that work. We've got some more work to do. We are reviewing the membership of the board. The chair has recently resigned. That's nothing to do with the board. It's simply that the chair was Justin Thomas of New River REIT, the shopping centre owners in Grays. He's no longer employed by them. And the only reason he was on the board was because of his connection with the town centre. So we'll be looking at that. But the relationship with the board is not perfect, but it is a lot better than it was. I think, if I'm honest, the board will always be challenging officers, and it should do. But as I say, it needs to be in a positive, challenging way, rather than a, you're not listening to us challenging way. In terms of the risk of losing the money, we've been quite clear with the board that we do need to get an outcome from the March meeting, or very soon afterwards, to enable us then to progress to the next stage of design, move forward with planning applications and run the procurement in parallel. The money has to be spent by March 26, that's 2 years off. Part of the reason, excuse me, for simplifying the projects was to enable us to get that design build quicker. But we're not at risk of losing it at the moment, but if we don't get on with this, if what we present to the board doesn't go down well, and we have to look further, then that risk increases quite rapidly. But at the moment, the discussions with the board in November and December were quite clear that we needed to work collaboratively. We needed to give very clear briefs to the design team, which we've done. We've pushed back on the design team when they've sought to embellish and said, no, we haven't got the time, the money, and the board hasn't got the patience to do that. So I'm confident we can deliver, and I said to George when we got the proposals through from the architects, that actually I was delighted that they had taken everything on board and come up with something that really, in my view, met what the board was trying to do and would be deliverable in budget. And as I say, we will share that with the board in advance of the meeting, and I hope they'll agree.
Does anyone else want to speak? Councillor Maney.
Did the board consider anything in a wider plan for nighttime activity? Because the Lighthouse Cafe, I mean, that's as it's going to be, but this centres around daytime only, doesn't it?
I think the aim for the Lighthouse Cafe and indeed activity in the activity centre is that it will be into the evenings as well. Okay. The location of the activity centre adjacent to the car park, and the fact that actually if we're not moving the boatyard now, it doesn't reduce the size of the car park, create a barrier between the activity centre and the cafe, means that car park is available in the evenings. In terms of the cafe, one of the conversations we had is that we have to be realistic that you are not going to turn Grays waterfront from somewhere which currently is dark and challenging at night to South Essex's hub of nightlife with one building. But what you can do with a proper design of what we're proposed, and most importantly, one of the points I haven't covered is we're also now putting a lot more focus on who actually runs that building, because it's not just about the building, it's about the approach to running it, people understanding what their market is, designing it in a way that it doesn't need to be open 24/7, 365 days a year to still be viable. The problem with the larger cafe restaurant before was that it was a lot of space that would attract business rates. And that would be very difficult to justify on wet Tuesday evenings in the winter, opening that just to pay the business rates. Whereas a lot of the new space now is outdoor space. It's aimed at, evenings. And we're working with agents on a brief for bringing in an operator that understands that they will need to do certain things during the week, and particularly during the winter months, that attract a local audience, that build local loyalty, whether it's pub quizzes on a regular basis, whether it is music entertainments on a regular basis that attract a local audience, but something that also means that when the sun shines and people are wandering down there, they can expand quite rapidly into that outdoor space. They can open a higher level kitchen. So it's been designed with a servery at the higher level, which can be closed most of, when it's not open. So we really thought about not just the building, but how we attract an operator. And we've looked at examples from elsewhere of where you've got an operator that does that, understands that there's two different markets and they can't alienate one by attracting another. Things like the use of pop-ups. I bleated on about this to George, and he's probably sick of it. But there's a restaurant, there's a place near me that's on an industrial estate, and on a sunny day, people go there because it's next to a canal, and people walk down there. But on a wet winter's night, you don't walk down that canal. But it's packed because they've got a local street food market that come down there, and on a Wednesday night it's quiz night, on a Thursday night it's taco night, on a Friday night it's pizza night, and it's that sort of thing we need to attract down here. So it's really thinking about how this is going to operate in a way that is viable going forwards, and has the potential to do that. And one of the other things we've looked at is could we, if there is money left over, because the previous schemes were really pushing the budget, costs have gone up. These we hope will be cheaper to deliver, leave us better contingencies. But one of the things we've talked about linked to the town centre is the possibility to invest in some vehicles that act as pop-up food stalls. So that if you have a music festival down by the waterfront, you bring in additional catering activity to suit that event that looks professional, looks attractive, but what you don't do is build loads of buildings, half of which are going to be empty half the year. So it's getting that balance. There has been conversation about other activity, and certainly some of the money we hope that will be freed up will go back into looking at public realm between the town centre and the waterfront, and whether we can increase activity in the pub that's at the bottom of the high street, the cafe that's there. So you've got a series of things along the route rather than just arrive at the station and a quarter of a mile away there, somewhere over there in the dark, there is a cafe. But equally, there have been various other suggestions as what could be done with the money. But to go back to the earlier question, we haven't got time to start again. What we've got to do is get what we've got already in train right. There may be some money left over, and public realm improvements, hopefully we can deliver quicker because there's potentially less need for planning, and potentially we can use existing contractors to implement those. But that's for later, once we are satisfied that the core projects are on track.
Catherine.
Thanks, Chair. So for me, the wider plan, I think whether we like it or not, Thameside Theatre is ever more costly to keep. So I'm thinking about a theatre with a bar and to boost the Grays economy, really. But I mean, I guess we're running before we can walk here. But it's you know, with the theatre the way it is and how much it costs to run, you know, we are where we are with that, aren't we?
I mean, the board were asked whether they would consider extending the activity centre to include wider cultural facilities. Their view was that it wasn't going to be possible to do that in the timescale and spend the money. There was also a view that it wasn't the Towns Fund's role to sort out the future of the Thames side at this stage. But one of the other advantages of not relocating the boat park is that it wouldn't rule out necessarily building something else next to the activity centre in the future if a future funding stream was identified. And when we have looked at how that might happen, not in any great detail, because I think if you talk to those who support the Thames side, they would be they'd be hugely supportive of a new theatre. The reason they're passionate about retaining the existing one is that there are no immediate plans for a new one. But as I say, at the moment, the Towns Fund doesn't have the time or the capacity to solve that problem, we need to make sure we don't lose the money by prevaricating. But equally, as I say, if the activity centre is a success, if the cafe is a success, the council does own other land down there, and it's possible you could add to that in the future. But you know, we will need to look at wider plans for both the town centre and the future of the Thames side again once the consultations come back on the library, museum and cultural strategy. But that won't be in time to use Towns Fund money.
Yeah, it was just to see the timeline on the Section 106 sign-off for the Thurrock Youth Zone. It's something we've historically struggled with. I think it's more of a resource issue than anything else. But obviously, they're quite keen to move on. Are you confident you can get that done quickly, or has progress on that? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Thank you. I think historically, you're right to say that some of our Section 106 agreements have taken some considerable time to deliver. From those that I've been involved with, I would say that's not always down to the council's resources. That's sometimes down to changes in views of the applicant. Here, I think this is relatively straightforward, and I'm confident that the applicant is able to resource it from their side, is clear about what they want. And we've been, as you know, in your capacity as chair of the planning committee, we have been reviewing our legal support for planning as a whole, and making sure that we are better placed to move these things forward far quicker.
Okay, thank you. And just to confirm, so and on this particular one, I assume progress is being made. You're quite confident you can get this signed off relatively soon?
George could come in, but it's not been flagged to me as a risk at the moment, and I have no doubt that the on-side would be flagging it. They're not backward in coming forwards when they feel the council is not meeting their timescales.
Councillor Maney.
Sorry, Chair. Can I just go back a bit? What is the intended purpose of the pontoon, or am I being stupid?
The aim is that we will get additional Uber services running from Gravesend via Tilbury into London. Their proposal at the moment is that those will happen on an occasional basis, but with further investment there is the potential for further services.
Okay. I was just thinking about if it was going to be used for the ferry, just a bit the uncertainty of the ferry. I didn't want a nice shiny new pontoon that's we've spent money on that's just not going to be used. Okay. No, thank you. All right.
Anyone else? Councillor Watson.
Sorry, just me really quickly. I'm really concerned about how this project is going to pan out. Is there a programme in place to deliver this project? Because it sounds really good what we want to do, but we are quite a way behind where Tilbury is right this moment in time. And what we would have liked to have done is done exactly what we wanted to do, but bring the public realm in and hopefully more towards Grays itself. Is there a programme in place? Because I can't see that with the rising costs as well, whether this whole project will be delivered as what we want it to be.
George could come in with any further comment, but there is a high-level programme, and once we've got the sign-off from the board of the schemes, we'll be working that up. The high-level programme suggests that we can do it in time. The detailed programme's been worked on behind that. Do you want to add anything?
No, I mean, obviously, following the December board meeting, we've done a lot more of the feasibility work. We've taken the brief from them and we've redeveloped the building designs. The public realm design is for the Riverside is already progressing with planning application later this year. We have a high-level plan, as Mark says, and following the next board at the start of March, we'll be developing a thorough plan for each of the projects to show that it'll be delivered by March 2026.
It's flashing like anything now. Sorry. So can I just ask, you may not know, how much has already out of the grant been spent on feasibility and programme and outlined like project work that is not going to be taken forward because you've had to relook at it all? Because that is, I'm just really concerned about the costs here.
We haven't got that to hand, but we can come back to that with you. It's not going to, I mean, there is going to be some, because clearly architects have worked up designs for more complex buildings, but they hadn't been developed beyond early, what's called RIBA, Royal Institute of British Architects, stages. So we haven't got into really detailed design. I'm not concerned here that abortive costs are putting the project at risk. We may come on to talk about other projects later on the agenda where costs to date are significantly higher than here. But because on Grays we hadn't got beyond outline design, we haven't really got into the really costly elements of design. And a fair amount of that work has helped inform the simplified designs. So I'm not saying there won't be money that we sit down at the end of this project and say we could have avoided spending that, but it's not a project where we're into significant abortive costs. I do think that this project could have been delivered sooner, and therefore the cost of staffing it could have been less. But we are where we are, and I think we can get to where we need to be.
Fair point on all of that, but my concern is, like, I know what you're saying, it's minimal cost. That minimal cost could have laid a pavement somewhere that would have been like needed more within Grays. So can we just work a bit more at pace with them to like actually start delivering? And I'm not going to be confident until it hits planning. And then once that's hit planning, whichever way they look at it and they agree or they disagree, that's when I'll be confident that it's going to be started building out. Thanks.
That's fully noted, and I think from where we were in November when we sat down with the board to where I hope we will be in March when we sit down with the board, I think the pace is demonstrably different from what it's been in the past, and we need to maintain that from now on.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much. Just one last comment, and it's saying that I think we need to look at as well. That there's a definite lack of local ward councillor buy-in into these projects, And I don't mean that as a criticism of the ward councillors. There's obviously the development of these projects has obviously not resulted in ward councillors feeling like they're involved in it as much as they should be. So I would like to see some more work done with the ward councillors. I mean, those are some of the most active councillors in the council. They're the sort of people, and I say this as no criticism, who would get a photo opportunity with an envelope being opened. And I say that and I say that as a point of praise. And yet, you know, we've had 2 meetings here talking about Grays and Tilbury. No representation from councillors wanting to get involved. And I think, considering I know those councillors and how passionate they are in other areas and how much work they do in other areas, it leads me to believe that there's an issue with perhaps previous communications, how the schemes have panned out. And I really would like to see some bridges built with the local councillors as well, because I've been surprised not to see, you know, any of them come and ask questions at these meetings. And I think that's probably due to communications problems earlier in the process where they haven't probably felt as included or listened to. So if you could make an effort on that front, I'd be really appreciated, because, you know, you've got some experienced councillors there. They know their wards, they know their communities. So I'd really like to see a bit more buy-in there.
That's really noted. There's been some consultation in Tilbury in January, and I know there were some councillors represented there. But certainly in terms of Grays, as we develop these projects, certainly the consultation with the local ward councillors will be increased.
That's all I've got to say, and everyone else has made their comments. Thanks for presenting that report. We've got the recommendations. That we note the proposed changes to the original programmes and the progress on delivering the Tilbury and Grays Towns Fund programmes, and that's the only recommendation that we agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. So now we come to the last report on the agenda, which is the Regeneration Project update, and I believe that's a report by George.
Yeah, I'll just... Apologies. Yes, I'll just give a quick introduction and let George do a bit more of the talking on this one than I tend to do. Yeah, we've obviously reported on these projects previously. The board has heavily criticised the past approach to reporting for the lack of inclusion of detail and the negatives as well as the highlights. The board's previously commented that latter reporting has been a significant improvement, so I hope this continues that aim. We've reported separately on the A13 previously, but we thought it would be useful, rather than have a separate report, to include it in this, because you haven't discussed this in any detail since last July, and I thought it would be useful to just give you a little update on where we are. And I'm pleased to report that the Regeneration team is now working in a very collaborative way with Pete's team. We've agreed which bits of the outstanding work need to be resolved by the Regen team, and in particular these land compensation issues, which we're progressing well. But as I say, the project is progressing, and we're still on course to deliver within the budget approved. We've put in a paragraph about CELEP funding. Again, that's perhaps something we wouldn't have mentioned in the past, but the project is part funded by CELEP. There have been regular value for money exercises throughout the project, and a project close value for money exercise has been done recently. In the interest of openness and transparency, if we were to progress this project today, knowing what the costs were going to be, knowing what the detailed assessment of what the outputs of the Lower Thames Crossing would be, then this project would probably struggle to get support from CELEP. But because the VFM now comes in fractionally below their threshold. But what they have accepted is that there are wider benefits and not just to Thurrock, because the previous business cases have looked primarily at Thurrock, and therefore there's no prospect of CELEP clawing back any money. And as I say, that's perhaps something we wouldn't have put in a report and would have left you to ask us about in the past, but I wanted to be clear that CELEP have been involved in the final VFM before CELEP closed down next month, and we've been open and transparent with them about the project, and they recognise that on balance, even though it doesn't meet the VFM, the project has been worthwhile.
Yeah, can I hold you at the A13? Because I think it's probably best to take questions as one by one, because obviously they're massive issues that have been squeezed into one report. So has anyone got any questions they want to ask specifically about the A13 widening? Councillor Watson.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Can I just ask, we've got some compensation claims and you've incorporated them within the budget. Can you just remind me what was the budget was agreed on the 12th of July and what proportion of that budget has we've set aside for compensation, and do we know what the actual costs are right now?
Yep, the budget was 147.45 million. In regards to the compensation, I probably don't think we should be discussing it here to prejudice the negotiations that are going on at the moment. It's fair to say we've taken a worst case scenario within our budget, and it's within the budget. But in terms of the individual cases and the actual overall compensation, I don't think this is the right place to talk about that, if that's okay. I'm happy to perhaps follow up on with the information.
Yeah, I think if we can share that, as I say, there are negotiations going on about some of that compensation, but I think George's point is that the budget includes our view of a worst case, and the ones that we have settled to date are within budget, and our expectation is the remainder will be within budget. I'm very happy to bring back the outturn once it's agreed, and to share with members some detail of what we've allowed in confidential correspondence. But as George has said, if we tell parties what our budget is, it'll be difficult to negotiate. Yeah.
Just for the benefit of the recording, I mean, obviously there's quite a lot of information on here, but there's no reminder of the bottom line regarding this project. So in terms of cost, where are we with the funding of this project? And how was it in terms of the 147 million? How's it been paid for? And any money that we've borrowed to pay for it, can you just go into a little bit more detail about that? Anyone else have any questions about E13 widening? Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, just a quick one. The road itself is relatively new, but if you was to drive down it, I mean, I can't confirm today because I didn't check today, but it's in a real mess. If you look at the central reservations, they're absolutely huge. Obviously, that was to do with the new legislation on corners and etc. But there are sort of quite large trees or plants growing up through the central reservation. So it's either they're growing up out of the ground, which is incredibly concerning because ultimately that would suggest to me that the tarmac in that central reservation isn't good, or more than likely it's getting so muddy and built up that the vegetation is actually growing through the inbuild. Quite frankly, it's a tip. We've spent a lot of money on this road, and if it's unmaintained, it's just going to fall apart. So it's really just to check to make sure that what process is in place to make sure that this is cleaned and it is maintained, so it doesn't fall apart. Given the cost implications, and maybe do you know? Have you driven down to see how much of an appalling state? It doesn't look like a brand new road. Quite frankly, it looks like it's been there for 30, 40 years. Yeah. It's quite shocking, really, when you consider the amount of money that's been spent. So, is there some form of plan in place? Thank you.
The condition of the road's been noted. We're working closely with George, and now just looking at the close out of the scheme with regards to liabilities with Kears, what should have been done and what shouldn't have been done at the time of handover of the scheme. But going forward, the road's now highways asset, is a maintainable asset or an asset or the council asset. So potentially, a cleansing team and stuff, conversations need to be had with regards to how cleansing and highways and then maintain that road going forward. But it's noted with regards to the central reservation. So, yeah.
Councillor Watson, was it?
Thank you. Following on from Councillor Kelly, Peter, so at the moment, don't sign that road off if it's in a state, because the question I'm going to ask you is, at what point in your capital programme have you programmed the maintenance as if it was normal to resurface or to do anything on that? Because you will have, at some point in your, whether it's in 10, 20, 25 years to do that, to re-tarmac it or redo it. But that life expectancy, as you just said, and what Councillor Kelly has just said, and that I got there, and I'm not being funny, I've seen 4 near miss and 1 accident up there where the lines are all over the place, nobody understands where they're going. That's a different matter. So if you look at that, and you look at the quality you've got now, in your programme would have been 25, 30 years, what do you think it's going to be? Shorter? By how much? Because you need to get it up to that standard so that we are not going to have it on our assets where in 10 years' time you're resurfacing everything and something else has to go.
Well, when the scheme's constructed, so it would have had to have been signed off. So all the construction needs to be signed off to make sure it complies with the regs, specifications and so forth. So I would hope that at the time of sign off that all them checks and diligence would have been done to make sure that it's got the design life and it's been constructed to meet that design life. So ideally, 20, 30 years time, we would possibly be looking to go out and resurface. But with any road surface, you've got additional factors to take into consideration, high stressed areas, stuff like that. Sometimes you can get premature failures and so forth. But we haven't built it into any forward programs at the moment because it's a brand new road, so we wouldn't really be worrying about it. Our maintenance programs are driven off road condition data as one source. So whilst we've got a brand new road out there, I would hope that that's not being triggered. So going forward, there's no plans to do anything at the moment with regards to maintenance works. And as I say, we're working with George and the Regen team to look at the close out of that scheme with regards to as-built drawings, health and safety files, and making sure that obviously due diligence has been done there with respects to sign off.
There's already a pothole up there on that roundabout. I use it a lot.
Okay.
Sorry, there's already a pothole up there. I use that roundabout a lot.
Okay, on Orsett Cock.
So so this is what I'm saying, and this is what Councillor Kelly just said. It's about we don't think it's at the standard it should be.
Yeah.
And that means that will have a detrimental effect onto our capital programme sooner than later.
No, I totally understand that, and as I say, there's discussions ongoing just to make sure that we've got all the checks and balances in place with regards to sign off for the scheme to make sure it will be done. So, and you know, only last week we had a meeting with ACOM about it.
Any more on A13? Cool. If we can move on to Stamping Hope, just as a precursor to this discussion, if we could, obviously the committee is probably aware that we received a submission by about Stamping Hope via email. Obviously, it's too late to be asking any questions on that. It'd be inappropriate. It's a shame that the resident hadn't contacted earlier, because I would have been happy to have had him, you know, at committee to ask some questions. But can we make sure that Mr. Wall gets a response in a reasonable timescale, please, and full? And if you could copy the committee into that response as well, because this chap has taken the time to make quite a detailed submission to the committee, so I don't want to see him not get the response that he deserves. Okay.
Certainly, I was copied in on that. George was copied in on that, and I will agree a response with the portfolio holder and share that with the committee.
Go ahead.
In terms of the report, we are reporting basically that we've now got to a point where we have a deliverable design for the station rebuild, known as Phase 1. We have a deliverable design for a transport interchange. That hasn't been the case in the past. We, in normal circumstances, would have taken that through planning and then done a gateway review of both phases. We have decided in consultation with the portfolio holder to ask for the planning application to be paused and to do the gateway review in advance of that. A gateway review is good practice in all major projects, and once you have got to a stage where you are confident about the deliverability of the design, it's a good time to look at whether we are continuing to do the right things with the project. In terms of the station, clearly, rightly or wrongly, and we've discussed this at previous meetings, we have demolished an existing station building. One way or another, we need to put something back. What we will be doing is looking at the cost of the current scheme versus the cost of alternatives. It won't be as simple as an option being to put it back how it was, because that wouldn't comply with current regulations either for the railway or for building control. But we will look at what the options are in terms of building a new station. But I do need to make it clear that one way or another, the council will have to put something back, because the council is the one that has demolished the station. And as I say, what we'll do as part of the review is look at whether there are alternative options, whether there is value engineering that could be done on the current scheme, and look at how that will be funded going forwards. In terms of Phase 2, which is the interchange, there hasn't until recently been a scheme that would be supported by the various statutory consultees and the council's own transport team. We're now at a point where we've consulted on the scheme as part of the planning application, and we believe that that is deliverable without objection from the majority of those consultees. Again, there is the opportunity to review whether it remains the right thing to do. As part of that review, we will look at what alternative options are: do nothing, do less, do what's proposed. We will also need to look at how it's funded. We'll also need to look at why, because a primary reason for this was to improve the interchange between rail, potential bus services to serve not just the immediate area, but particularly the significant growth that continues at London Gateway will now follow at TEP, and will potentially come with redevelopment of TOP, which is the Thames Oil Port, which is the next phase that we expect a planning application on. But we also need to look at whether an interchange in this location is the best option. So we've agreed with the portfolio holder to do that review, to pause the planning application while we do it, and then to come back to Cabinet with the option for review at overview and scrutiny at that stage of those options over the course of the next 4 to 6 months maximum for making a decision is my view. And as part of that, obviously, we need to look at whether the balance of funding is appropriate. As part of this, we have been working with CELEP both to hang on to funding that we have already been provided with and reassure them that we still intend to deliver the outputs that they have sought from their funding, and also to relocate funding from Grays that will not be utilised on that project in the near term. That's been agreed in principle. There's some paperwork to do to sort that out, but with the caveat that we will need to demonstrate that we have got the rest of the funding identified before then. So the summary is that there are deliverable solutions that meet the original aspirations of this project from a planning and construction point of view that are supported by the key stakeholders, but we don't have the funding bottomed out for it yet. And what we will need to do is decide whether we continue with one or other phase and when.
So that's killed the mood, isn't it?
But it's, I mean, right from when we discussed it back in October 22, this project has had its challenges, and part of the problem is that there has been no clear solution to deliver the original outputs. We're at that point now. The challenge now is how we fund it. The station rebuild is potentially deliverable with existing funding commitments and the reallocated funding from CELEP with relatively little council investment. But we need to assess whether that would meet CELEP's required outcomes if we then didn't go on and do the interchange. So there's some work to be done, but we've promised you throughout we'll be open and honest, and if that kills the mood, then so be it. It's better that we give you false hope than we give you false hope, rather. This project is extremely challenging to deliver in the council's current financial situation, and we are doing our best to understand what it would cost and then how we might fund it.
So, as someone that lived very close to that station, I was always absolutely baffled by the idea of the transport interchange. Like, it's a narrow little road. Only, you can only fit, two buses through it. There was no means of like major reconstruction of the road system there. You had a stream and a bridge and houses either side. When I think about like transport interchanges, I think about Clapham Junction. Yeah, like the idea that we were gonna you just need two bus stops. Yeah, and the fact that we got stuck into this nonsense for so long, it just beggars belief. It really does. So as we stand, best case scenario, let's not say worst. When are we going to have a rebuilt station at Stanford Hope? Because that is the bottom line that anyone cares about. Like, we're saying that we can do phase one, maybe, if Sellat forgive us for our many crimes. But if Sellat are okay with stage one and not doing stage two, when are we going to have a new station built? But what's your best case scenario? Because the people of Stamford just need a little bit of hope on this project.
Can I just pick up on the interchange point first, and I will get to the second part. I do think that interchange is probably a grandiose word for what ultimately is a bus stand and stop and a cycle park. And that probably is taking it down the other way, because the cycle park will include e-bike charging points as well, and there is funding for that, and that is part of a active transport option to get down to the docks. The challenge, the challenge of the stand is that you've rightly highlighted that it's a narrow road. And if you are going to provide a bus link from the station to developments nearby, and you want people to use that as their primary route to work, the bus has to be there when the train arrives. The bus can't be there at the end of the road disappearing when the train arrives with the next one in half an hour. And there isn't space on the road to have a bus standing. There is space to have a bus stopping. So we do need to look at if the bus service is going to be linked to the train arrival rather than hoping that it passes at the right time, then there will need to be a stand somewhere. But we do need to investigate whether this is the right option for that, whether it could be done elsewhere, where there is other land, and the bus can then leave at an appropriate time when it knows that the train is due to arrive. Because at the moment this is predicated on the idea of a shuttle bus that picks people up from the train and takes them through. So all of that's got to be investigated. Going back to the station, we have to clarify whether using Select funding or remaining Select funding on the station meets its outputs. There will still be a small gap. We will need to then write a business case to identify that within the capital programme. It will involve borrowing because we don't have any capital. Borrowing will require approval of the commissioners, DLUC and Treasury. The point here is that we have to do something because we demolished the station, and therefore at some point we will need to deal with this, and it will be key that we get that business case through the council's processes with the support of the commissioner onto DLUC and onto Treasury. Irrespective of how much it is, it will still come from, there isn't money in the current capital programme. So at this stage, I can't tell you when, but what we are now doing is doing the work. We've got a GRIP 4 stage, which is a rail stage in their design process. So we are pretty confident about the cost. We have agreement in principle that Network Rail will build it, rather than it being a council-run project, which is really important because we know we're not good at building things historically. Well, we said we'd be open and honest.
You can tell it's his last night, can't you? Yeah.
I hope I've been open and honest throughout my involvement with this committee, and I'm sure I'll still be back before you with some things, even if I'm not here as the director of place. But no, what we are looking at is the right approach to this is to clarify what it's costing, understand who's going to build it, and make sure that's somebody that is capable of building rail infrastructure, and then identify the funding. So all of that has been moving forwards, and as I say, we're just going to review the whole project, identify what is the right thing to do, and then if we have to go and ask Treasury to let us borrow some money to do it, then we'll have to go and ask Treasury for approval to borrow some money to do it. Now, it may be that there are further funding opportunities downstream that might allow us to repay that, but I don't see any at the moment that would qualify for rebuilding something that we demolished without having clarity around building it. So we have to be open and honest about that. In an ideal world, I quite understand why you might separate out a demolition contract from a building contract. It's quite common, but I've said before, in response to a question I think from you, did we demolish it too soon? I believe we did. We now have to deal with that.
I'm really speechless, but I'm going to not say anything more on this one. Councillor Watson.
I think out of every project, this one angers me the most. And the reason being is my very first planning, it was this one that came on the table, and it looked stunning with costs and everything, which was very disingenuous and lied. And then for some unknown reason, we decided to knock a station down, which isn't funny. It's actually like, I've never known any other council to just go off and just knock things down without thinking about how to build them again. And then the interchange is going to a bus shelter now. I mean, I'm totally lost. I'm totally lost for words. So can we just put it back as it was? Just find a way, because there is no choice. These people, these residents, didn't deserve this. They didn't ask for this. They didn't ask for it at all, actually. All they want is a functional station, and they're not bothered if you just like put it exactly back. I know you said it's building control. They're not bothered. But George, you was in a very, very irate meeting with the board members about this, who had like gone out and spoken to residents who just said, all we want is a building. We don't care, just put it back. We don't care about the and even the fact that Daybreak Windows like site we bought for this, to be honest with you, Mark, just sell it so we can build the station, because this is how it should be for these residents. So by hook and crook, go to Treasury. I would even go and knock on number 10 and go, I want money. This needs to be back, and guarantee me we will never demolish anything again unless we know how we're going to build it. Because for a member, and the chair of the plan at the time is sitting next to me, I just feel we've been really disingenuously let down on all of this, because they came with figures, yes, it's fine, with a great scheme that we thought, you know what, it's really great for Stamford. I know what they've got now as a platform. So we've got to find the money. We haven't got a choice.
I understand. To be fair to predecessors on this, I think in hindsight, yes, we demolished it too soon. But there was a capital programme for this. And there was a contract with a contractor to deliver it. The capital programme's been removed since for reasons that are clear to the whole council. And the building contract, when it was about to be signed, the contractor came back and said the price had effectively doubled. So it's not, you know, the project has not been well managed in the past, but there are other factors that have led to the situation we're in, and hindsight's a wonderful thing. But I take the point. I think in terms of rebuilding it as it was, I think the reality will probably come out of our options assessment that it will be quicker and cheaper to proceed with the scheme that has currently been agreed with Network Rail, because simply to go back through the process and redesign what used to be there, the process of going through their grip stages would probably cost more than any money you would save by building something less. C2C would potentially remove their funding for the additional capacity of the cafe, because they're funding that on the basis that they'll get rental income from that. So I think the reality will be that if we are going to rebuild it, that we're probably best progressing with what's currently agreed. But as I say, we'll do that review, we'll put other options forward, and I'll pause there to allow members of the board to compose.
So I totally get moving forward. C2C saves time. That's fine. I don't care which option, but we just need to get it up and there. And as for the bus shelter that was once the interchange, I think like we just leave it as it is, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
And that will certainly be one of the options. The land that we acquired, I've said openly in this committee before that I've no doubt that we paid more than it was worth, and that's reported on elsewhere. It may have some value to be sold on. I'm sure it will have some. The process has identified that it is in a flood area, so we need to assess that. But all of those options will be looked at and brought back before any decisions are made. But as I say, there's no escaping the fact that we as part of this, whatever else we do, we're going to need to find a way to put the station back.
Sorry, Mark, can I just clarify? Did you just say that the Daybreak Windows one was in a flood area? The land?
Yeah, it is.
So why did we buy something that's in a flood area that was going to have houses or something on it? If it's in a flood area, why did we even do that?
I have to plead the Fifth Amendment on that. I wasn't here, and I believe the intention was it was a complex negotiation because the land had already been sold, and we had to pay somebody to withdraw from a contract. We then bought it. There was a view that the land would add value to land elsewhere by creating a link to the other side of the waterfront. But that detail I wasn't involved in. There is nobody here now that was involved in that from an officer point of view. So I can't comment any further. All I can look at is what are our options with that land now. And disposing of it is an option, but what the design work has highlighted is that it is within a flood area, and that has affected the design of the interchange and car park proposal. But of course, unless you happen to have a car park there, flooding is less of an impact on car parking than it would be on housing development.
It's in this report, and we're going to see the next two, which is just as bad. I mean, in terms of impact, like Purfleet, it's just horrendous. I mean, it's fair to say that the BVI was generous when you look at this on example of Stamford. That, you know, as damning as the BVI was, it could have been a lot worse. You know, it could have been harsher, and it would have been fair to have been harsher as well.
I think if the BVI had had the time to do some of the work we've done, then it probably would have been yes. But as I say, you know, we are at a point now where we have clarity around what is deliverable, and we need to make a decision about whether we do that now and how we fund it. We hadn't got that clarity before, so if I'd come to you, you know, a year ago and said the right thing to do is this, that, and the other, I would not have had the costs and the detailed work to justify that decision, which is why I didn't do it. There's more work to be done, and I'm sure we'll be discussing Stamford Hope for a while. If you're ready to move on to Purfleet, I think that is more positive going forwards. We have extricated ourselves from the agreement with PCRL. That, in my view, was absolutely the right thing to do, and perhaps could have been done earlier. We've done it in a way that Homes England have not withdrawn investment that they've made to date, because they recognise that the project is still a good project. It has its delivery challenges, and it needs a different partnership to deliver it, and that is a very positive outcome for the council. The fact that we were able to get the PCRL board to agree to terminate it was also positive, because it reduces the council's risk of any comeback from PCRL going forwards effectively to zero. There undoubtedly will be some issues that PCRL have to sort out themselves, and we're well aware that there are some suppliers to them that are really concerned about payments to them at the moment, and you might see more about that, but there is no contractual arrangement between them and the council, but we will be working with them to support them in how they move forwards. Phase 1A, Sanctuary will continue to complete. There are some challenges with local residents around that, and ward members and the forum are working with me to challenge Sanctuary on those, and Councillor Watson, I've provided you with a reply on some of those today. And we're working with them on phase 1A2 going forwards. I have drafted a cabinet report which may go in March, it may go early in the new administration, around next steps, portfolio holder, leader, shadow portfolio holder and leader of the opposition group, the main opposition group, will be meeting with Homes England and a potential partner, ECF, English Cities Fund, that was referenced in the Cabinet report which came here before, to talk about routes to possibly involve them in a scheme. But the Cabinet report will talk about options, including working with ECF to develop a position where we may be able to enter into a development agreement with them in parallel with other options. So there'll be no final decision on who our partner is till we have a clear series of options that are at a detailed level, with an emphasis on their ability to deliver and where the money is coming from. There is an alternative funding stream within Homes England to HIF funding, which is called BILL. They like their three-letter acronyms. We were talking about that earlier. BILL is the Brownfield Infrastructure and Land Fund, and we believe it is very appropriate to Purfleet. So Purfleet is very definitely not dead. I believe Purfleet will come forward with a new delivery model over the course of the next 6 to 9 months. But we will do really good due diligence on all of those options before seeking a decision, because it's really important that we are able to bring forward a partnership that has the wherewithal from day one to deliver, not somebody that has the hope of funding in the future. As I say, I'm reasonably optimistic that is achievable in that timescale. And as I say, we've got a meeting next week with some senior politicians and the chief exec and myself with potential partners to move that forward.
I think what the concern that I've got is that obviously the main problem here was the financing of our partner was not as robust as it should have been. So there was probably a problem with the due diligence that we did into that partner. But I suppose my concern is that, you know, that partner could borrow for basically nothing at that time, you know, potentially because of interest rates, and therefore the scope they had for making profit on that build was probably far more flexible than any new partner is going to have due to the cost of borrowing at the moment. So that is going to fundamentally change the nature of the scheme going forward. And my concern is that due to the financials, we're going to end up with a sort of gentrified scheme that's pretty much aimed at people moving from London rather than a scheme that's going to benefit the people of Purfleet. I mean, that is prime real estate by any definition. And I've got a lot of frustrations with decisions that we made around the garrison, decisions that we've made historically, this project as well. But it's just, we're going to have to wait and see, aren't we? What this partner brings to the table. Because at the moment, there's not much to say about this report as far as I'm concerned at the moment, because we are just firmly in this waiting stage, aren't we, at the moment? But I look forward to seeing, you know, the new plans when they come forward in more detail, because that's probably one of the most exciting areas for development in the whole borough, and you know, could be absolutely transformational. You know, you've almost got a blank canvas across there to do what you want with a lot of that area. So it's just about crossing fingers and hope that this partner is the correct partner, because we certainly didn't choose the right partner last time.
No, I think it's key. I think there's a couple of points there I'd like to pick up on. One is there's quite a difference between finance and funding when it comes to development. And finance is generally borrowing, and funding is investment. And yes, potentially the previous partners could have taken advantage of low-cost borrowing, but that's quite difficult to get for development without other levels of funding alongside it. One of the advantages of ECF is that Legal and General are a 25% shareholder in it, so you know that you're getting one of the largest property investing funds in the UK in the partnership from day one. PCRL made efforts to get Legal and General into their partnership. I sat in various meetings with Legal and General, who were and remain very interested in investing in Purfleet, but they weren't able to do that within the constraints of PCRL and the development agreement. So I fully get that that's key to this. Ward members, the community forum, who I've met with regularly, both formally in their meetings and informally on walkabouts, are adamant that the community will continue to support this, providing the community infrastructure is part of it. And I made it very clear to all parties that we talked to that is a non-negotiable. Whilst I may be stepping down as the interim director of place, I hope very much that I will be heavily involved in this project going forwards in future roles within the council, because I am confident there is a route through this that will deliver that community benefit and capture that value, but in a way that benefits the community. Because you're absolutely right, pluses are the waterfront, and the journey time to London, but we mustn't build a development that's purely about the waterfront and journey times to London. But we use that to generate the value that will enable us to create the community investment that will support the community. If you talk to the community, they have no problem with you know, the fact that some people who live there will be living there and commuting into London, as long as the people who live there, who want to stay there, have got somewhere to live, somewhere to shop, somewhere to get to see the doctor, and a station that enables them to get to their jobs, because many of those work elsewhere. So that's all understood, and I'm very keen to be continuing to be involved in this project going forwards, because I do think that we ought to be able to get it right, and we would be getting it right, hopefully second time, but we won't be the first. You work in Barking and Dagenham in the past. Barking Riverside was not right first time. It wasn't right second time. It's getting on now. So that's not an excuse, but I'm just saying that it won't be the first development that didn't work out first time. But we have a real opportunity to get it right, and we will have to go through proper procurement. But I've said this before. You really have to be careful with your procurement, because what we want is the best developer partner and not the best bidder. And we got a very slick proposal last time, but we haven't had the delivery. We need to make sure that we get somebody that we know is going to be able to deliver this, and a partnership that enables us to take action if it isn't progressing. But as I say, something will come forward to Cabinet shortly that will talk about next steps, and I would envisage something coming to Cabinet in 6 to 9 months for a final decision on next steps. But in the meantime, we'll continue to work with the community. We'll continue to get housing built on site, and keep you appraised.
So, I'd like to ask that we extend the meeting. I'd like to just extend until we finish. We've only got, I mean, we've got two items. We've got two discussions. We're halfway through this, so yeah, of course, yeah. So I'll extend the meeting until end of the agenda. Agreed. Yeah. Watson.
So for me, obviously, it's my ward, and I'm quite passionate about this development. The only thing that gives me a bit of comfort with what's going forward is that it's actually backed by Homes England, and Homes England are very good at doing their due diligence. They won't just give a seal of approval to anybody. But that's one. The second thing is Mark's absolutely right, and so is my residents. They designed the scheme with PCRL. They're the ones that went forward, and they're the ones that this is what they wanted, and spent many, many months designing what they wanted. And it's probably one of the only schemes, apart from King's Road in Hackney, where the residents have actually designed it. And they're very keen on keeping it as that. And that's one of the caveats around there. And it will incorporate the riverfront, and every now and again I have to rein them back in again, because we've already got ships going up and down the Thames with Purfleet on Thames along it and things like that. But they're getting there. So I think as soon as we can get it sorted to even start, I think that gives them a little bit more hope down in Purfleet on Thames, where they've got nothing already anyway. They've only got one shop, so it would give them a little bit more. Thanks.
Do you want to make any comment on that? Good. Anyone else? We'll move on to Grays South.
Right, so on Grays South, we most of the view on where we were and where we should go, we've covered at previous meetings. We have been working with CELEP to ensure that we can retain the investment they put in to date. That's pretty much agreed. There's a bit of paperwork to sort out, but that's pretty much agreed. The principle of relocating unspent funding elsewhere is simply because at Grays we don't have a clear project to persuade them to leave that 5.4 million in Grays, so that would have been handed back had we not made the case to move it to Stamford. That's not a vote of no confidence in Grays. It's actually a vote of confidence in that we persuaded them that there is still the prospect of a solution to Grays South, and that they shouldn't take away the money they've invested to date. We'll still have to monitor that under the new regime because, for those who aren't aware, CELEP's responsibilities will pass to us, but we will still have to demonstrate to DLUC that we're using that money appropriately moving forwards. We are now looking to work with Network Rail, C2C and other partners to bring forward a scheme. That has not moved as far as I would like at this stage, simply because Network Rail have another number of major projects that are tying up their resources at the moment. We're optimistic that we will get some airtime with them very shortly to start talking about Grays. But as I say, the key priority has been to demonstrate to CELEP that we still have ambitions for Grays South, and therefore we can hang on to the money that's been provided to date, and we will come back once we've sat down with Network Rail and looked at what those options are. Network Rail have access to a range of funding that we wouldn't have through government, based on using investment in rail land and infrastructure to free up housing development. It's quite a big push for government, and there is also support from the likes of Homes England for that. But we're at a very early stage of that. The key, which we covered in previous reports, was to accept that an underpass was not going to happen, close that down, hang on to the money we'd already got, and now have those conversations with Network Rail. As I say, we just haven't been able to get the time with Network Rail yet, but I'm reasonably confident we'll get that soon.
Thank you. I mean, we've gone over. There's very little new to go over that we didn't go over before on this one. But I mean, I just have to stress again, it's one of those projects where you just think, did no one in the room at any point just look at this and go, "This is bonkers. Why are we doing this?" I mean, I find this one staggering. I just don't get this one at all, and it's equally as embarrassing as Stamford. I mean, at least it's worse actually, isn't it? It's worse because at Stamford, like you've got a real, you've got this aim where you think there's going to be a big growth in population, and you need to move people around in a much more effective way. You want more direct routes. You want to improve the entire, transport infrastructure. You want to have everything integrated with each other. It was unrealistic and it was poorly planned, but at least there was some sort of vision to it. Whereas this was just an underpass for like a stupid amount of money, and I just don't get it. I'm glad that. Hopefully, I mean, realistically, it's dead. Like, in completely, and the money's being spent elsewhere. We spent a load of money and achieved absolutely nothing. But again, this is just another one where the BVI were just so generous. You know, it is so generous to us on this. This is shocking. So, yeah, I hope to never see it again. That's my view, and I appreciate the candour on this. The first time he brought it back, and I think the committees of one mind on this, to be honest. But I appreciate that other people might want to expand on what I said. Does anyone else want to make any comments? Have I summed up perfectly the madness of this? So yeah, thanks for that. Did you want to sum up in any way?
I think, I mean, I've said all I needed to say at previous meetings about the past. As I say, I hope there is a future for investment in Race Station, but you asked that you hope you never saw it again. I promise you that while I'm here, you won't see an underpass again.
So I just wanted to chip in. So.
Can I? First of all, I agree that it was balmy anyway, but at least like they've got a station which is more that Stamford Scott, and we need to sort out. But can I ask you another question on something else? It's something that's very, very dear to Councillor Kelly's heart, and I don't know if you can actually give me the answers to it, but can you go away and just email it through? A13 east facing access. Apparently, we put a scheme through that was not supported by National Highways due to the impact on the strategic road network, and I gather that Peter and the other gentleman might have helped. But we are looking at identifying alternatives for it, and we are going to be submitting a strategic outline case for DFT consideration. Is it possible that you could sort of like email us what those considerations are, what we're potentially looking at, because this has been going on for years?
Thanks. I will pass that on to Claire Demore. It would have come under Claire anyway, but it now comes definitely under Claire. I have had some involvement in East Facing Slips previously, and I'll be honest, I thought there was a report due to come to you at some stage on it, but I will feed that back. I know there have been some conversations with National Highways about it. There is a conversation ongoing with National Highways about trunking of the A13, and this may or may not feed into that. But I will ask Claire to arrange for Peter or one of the team to respond to you.
If we're happy to proceed, just one recommendation that we note the proposed changes to the original programmes and progress in delivering the regeneration projects. Were you all agreed? Agreed. The final is the work programme. Do any members have anything that they want to add to the work programme? No, that's fine. Then I'll close this meeting. I'll just say a very brief word because it is the last meeting. I'd like to thank all the members and officers for attending these meetings. I'm a really big believer in members behaving in a grown-up and constructive way in committees, and it always winds me up when we get this partisan political grandstanding that I see in some other committees. I've been very happy to be in housing committee where it hasn't happened, and we haven't had any of that this year, and I think it's testament to the mindset of the committee members that we have with us today. So I'd like to thank you all for making my job as chair particularly easy and constructive and good fun as well. So thanks very much to all of you. So I would just say that I will declare this meeting closed at 9:38. Thank you very much, everyone.